And I remember telling him, you are not your father and I'm not your mother.
Exactly.
So you can't, we're not going to have the same relationship. And then again, that goes back to piggyback to, like I wrote my second book, it's called My Secret Life. And there were powerful women. It was a collaboration of women, a panel of powerful women. I worked for the police department. I think one lady was a judge. There was one minister or a pastor or something, all in abusive relationships, because it happens so subtly. And it's not about your strength or your weakness. It can be, but it's about you.
And here you are, living despite it all. And this is by Rupi Kaur. Welcome to another exciting episode of Podcast with Sheila. With me today is trauma recovery coach and psychologist, Tanya. From growing up in an emotionally abusive environment to identity crisis, to her two toxic and abusive marriages, and always feeling alone and unprotected. Tanya will be sharing with us today her journey so far and how it's been. Hello, Tanya, and welcome to Podcast with Sheila.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me here.
It's a delight to have you.
I am excited.
Do you have a favorite quote you'd like to share with us today?
I do. Throughout my trials and tribulations, this is what got me through. You got this.
You got this.
So that was something that reminded me of my own power when I didn't have anybody around. I just kept hearing that pop in my head. So that's definitely a quote. If you're ever doubting yourself and don't believe that you can do it, you got this.
You got this. Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who Tanya is, before we actually get into today's story.
So I am a mother of 6. I grew up with older parents who kind of were distant from me, and I didn't feel like they loved me, but they had a very toxic and not so loving relationship. So I kind of grew up with that same thought process, thinking that that was normal. So I ended up creating my own family. Most of it was toxic, and I just recently divorced a toxic marriage, very abusive. And that particular thing is what sparked me from continuously staying in that toxic environment, because I knew something wasn't right and I knew it was time to make a change.
Great. When you talk about a toxic environment, what exactly do you mean by toxic environment?
Well, my parents, they argued a lot. They didn't fight per se, it wasn't physical, but it was name calling. Like I've never seen my parents hug. I've never seen them kiss. I've never seen them say, I've never heard I love you. My father never told me he loved me, except for one time, and that was a couple of days before he passed away. My mother to this day has never really told me she loved me. It was just the emotional toxic behaviors that, like the generational, my mother didn't do it to me, so I don't know how to do it. And I even passed that on to my kids. I find myself, not as much now because I'm working on it, but I find myself disconnected from my kids because of the way that I grew up, and I instilled some of those same insecurities and toxic behaviors upon them, which I really don't like. So it wasn't necessarily physically for me as an adult, though it was physical. But my mother and father, I didn't see any physical abuse. It was just more verbal and emotional abuse.
Was that what led to you experiencing an identity crisis?
Oh man, that is interesting. I've actually been diagnosed, which is weird, in the medical field as having bipolar and borderline personality disorder. So growing up, I really thought something was wrong with me, and I was so disconnected from the world. But as I grew older and learning through my spiritual awakening process and learning more about nature and the universe and all of that, I started to see that the things that I've experienced in my past were just life experiences for me to learn from. But the identity crisis part comes in because I was so conditioned to believe that something was wrong with me. And it took me a lot to break out of that belief system, because being called borderline personality, I don't even know. You know, it kind of made sense at the time because I was trying to find answers. But as I really started to grow in myself and learn and love myself and see who I really was and walk in my purpose, you know, it's not multiple personalities. It's just, I just wasn't being real with myself. So my identity crisis was, I wasn't being natural. I wasn't being in tune with my soul. I was playing the role of what I was expected to be played of. And it drove me nuts. Like literally, it was not healthy at all. And it kind of like, I've been in psych wards because I'm trying to live up that lifestyle, trying to be the perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect this, the perfect that. And there's no such thing as that. But I know that. So now I'll just be the perfect me.
Do you think that, because a number of times I've heard people say that sometimes when you are tagged with something that you are not, you know, I'm going to give an example here, because going back home from where I come from as an African and growing up in an African community, children are allowed to explore themselves and be who they are. But in this part of the world, where when a child expresses himself too much, then they are tagged. You get what I mean? And children like these can't accept it that much because they know within themselves that there is nothing wrong with them.
Exactly.
That is how they are. They have a lot of energy. They can express themselves. So the moment you tag them and try to seclude them from their mates, then you're actually creating a problem. So for me, that is what I believe, that is where you begin to create problems for the child. Because and out of stories I have heard, and even just a recent podcast, the gentleman who came on said he in the same situation and he couldn't accept that he had issues growing up, and this actually affected him. So it was when he was tagged that affected him. I think for me that if they could allow the children to be who they are, you get it, allow them to express themselves, just be who they is much better than putting divisions and secluding them and tagging them and putting them in groups and putting them in special classes and putting exactly all of that. For me, well, they do it, but I think that from my lay person's experience that they should at least let these children be expressive of themselves rather than try to put them into, because from what you're saying, it goes to prove that I'm right based on what.
And for me, I learned, like my kid, in fact, I just told my 12-year-old and 9-year-old, I think yesterday, that's exactly, like, I let my kids express themselves. Like my mom, I remember my mother, she whooped me one time when I was a kid, and it was like brutal. If she had done that today, she probably but that particular incident just showed me that this is not, no, I don't like this. And I would never do my kids like that. Instead, because a lot of times when she punished me, it could have just been a simple, what's wrong? What happened? Why are you doing this? You know, instead of just grabbing the belt or grabbing the switch or just telling me to sit down and be quiet. You know, not that nice, of course, but and I learned growing up with my kids, like I would give my kids the opportunity to explain to me, why did you, now that doesn't make sense. Why did you do that? You know, instead of just, give me the belt and I'm just gonna know, because sometimes kids literally, they don't know what they're doing. Like they're kids. They're 3.
Yeah.
Like, why are you whooping them? They don't know that they just put all the mustard on the flour on the kitchen sink, and they don't know. They just know that they're exploring and they're navigating through the world. And even my teenagers, I have 6 kids. My 4th daughter was the most challenging, and I love her. She reminds me of me, which is my thing with my mom. My mom, I actually remind my mother, like I remind her. You know, I remember her. So it's kind of like the relationship I have with my mom, I have with my 4th child. But we're getting better at it. It's just like, you do things like she used to do things as a kid, and now she's older. She's like, Mommy, now I see why you used to do what you did. now it makes sense, you know, instead of just whooping us. Or they thought that giving them time out, or like I would have them, I created the point system, you know, if they did certain things, they would get a certain amount of points. You know, I would make them work for things. And if they questioned what was going on, I would answer them. We would have family meetings and I would let them discuss their matters. What's going on? How do you feel in the family? What's going on? Is it something mommy needs? You know, I did that because I didn't have that growing up. For me, it was sit down and shut the F up or because I said so. And that was it. It was no, it was none of that. So I made sure that I reversed that. That was a generational curse I had to break. So some of the things I did pick up with my mom that weren't so good, but a lot of those things that hurt me as a kid, I made sure that I did not do with my kid. That was just determined not to.
Great, great. So you've been through 2 abusive marriages, right?
Yes.
Were these emotional or physical abuse?
One was mostly emotional and verbal. The last one was what's called a narcissistically abusive relationship. It was definitely physically, sexually, emotionally, financially, any kind of abuse that you could think of. We partaked in on both sides. Most of it was a lot of it was on both our sides, but a lot of it on my end was out of defense or protecting myself against him. But he would turn it around as if I was hurting him, which would give him another reason to turn around. You know, so it was like a cycle. So that second one was definitely dangerous, where lives were on the line pretty much every day. The first one was just a reminder of what I grew up with, which was the verbal abuse, or, you know, the name calling.
So what should be the signs that one should look for before going into a relationship? What should be the telltale signs? Because sometimes you see the person is nice, you can never see what is behind the scenes. You can never see. So what should you think we should look out for?
I would say the top sign for me, as I know, follow your instincts. Oh my God. If you don't learn anything else in life, period. If you have one inclination that something is wrong, and that same thing, like you just look for red flags. One red flag would be, especially for a narcissist, they're very attentive. And they're attentive for a reason, because they want to know what weapons of mass destruction, so to speak, that's what I call it, that they can use against you. So you want to follow your instincts, I would say. You definitely want to be quiet. If you're starting off a relationship dating, you want to just learn the other person first, you know, see what they have to say, see what they've been through. But most importantly, follow your instinct, because your spirit, your soul is going to tell you. Like, I can honestly say, my spirit told me not to marry him or date him. I thought it was the devil, because I was so in love. Because he tricked me, you know, so it was like the manipulation and all of that. It played a huge part, but not loving yourself plays a factor in them being able to do that too. So you definitely want to heal from all your pain. You definitely want to pay attention to those red flags, but most importantly, follow your instinct. Listen to that something that's telling you. If something is telling you something about this person, believe it. I don't care how perfect they are, how pretty they are, how much money they have. None of that matters, because all of that, especially with the narcissist, after they know they've gotten you, all of that's going to disappear anyway. You're going to need your strength to get the H-E-L-L out of there, like real fast and out of the So you definitely follow your instincts. That's all I can say. Like, that's the most important.
And I also think that you should listen to the people around you sometimes, because when you're in love, you don't really see far and beyond. But the people around you can see and see through the person, through your eyes, kind of. So yeah, because just before we started the show, I was listening to an interview by a lady called Sarah Bronick, if I'm right. She's the author of Simple Abundance. I think that book sold, she said, 7 million copies around the world. Yeah, and she made a lot of money from there. So to cut a long story short, she went on to her third marriage. And she was so much in love, and she didn't even look out for anything. But the people around her kept telling her, no, don't go into it. Don't go into it. But I think she was blinded by love, and she went into it. She said the first 2 years was everything she wanted. Then after that, that was when the crisis started, because she was so much into money. And I think the man had just come in for the money. And she said initially when the man came, the man said, you are not good with the finances and all. Meanwhile, she's been handling her money way before you came in. She's been making the money herself. She's been handling it way before you came in. And then you come in and you say, you can't handle the money. Let me handle it for you. And then gradually, when she started losing it all, the man started being mean. So she asked the man, why are you being so mean to me? And the man said, because I have no value of you anymore. You don't in this relationship, and didn't know how to come out of it until her daughter came to visit and said, I can see you're not happy. Get out of it. And she said she couldn't. So her daughter said, you've been empowering women. Women look up to you for things like this. You write books and women read it. Why can't you do it for yourself? So her daughter was like her first point of encouragement to get out of this relationship. What was your first point of encouragement? Or what was your, that gave you the encouragement to leave these abusive relationships?
My first husband passed away last year. And right before he died, a few months before he died, he asked me, because my ex-husband and I just divorced, we were in a fight. And he didn't know that I was on the phone talking to my ex-husband, so he got upset, and we literally physically fighting. So my first husband called the police. So we ended up separating. I moved in with my ex-husband. His thing was, why are you with him? Like, why are you with him? Why, leave him alone? And it was just like, because I love him, whatever. And mind you, I worked for the police department at the time. I'm writing books. I'm telling people the same thing, like you said. It's a mind thing, like I said, especially with the narcissists. You have to be careful because it's hypnotizing.
Yeah.
It's like they're literally like a drug. Because I was just telling someone right before I got on the phone with you. It's like they're coming into your life to teach you to wake up from taking things that you should no longer accept. So they're like the messenger to wake up, so to speak. So if you allow the relationship to teach you what it's supposed to, you'll get out safely. It's going to be traumatic while you're in that experience, but so many people get trapped because they stay stuck in not believing in themselves. But my ex-husband's message to just literally over the past year, and the difficult thing is, I told a client this last week, it wasn't hard to leave, even though the process for me leaving took some time, but I was at the point where I wanted to leave. The most challenging part was staying away from it. It was as if it was an addiction. So I had to fight that, even though I knew he was toxic, I knew he was crazy, I knew he was addictive, abusive, but he was addictive. It was like a drug. And me, the hardest part, especially dealing with the narcissist, they have this thing called no contact. And I stuck with it for the majority of the part, but like most people who deal with narcissists, it's like a drug. If you're missing it, because I wasn't filling myself up with the love and the attention and affection that I was still looking for him. Even though I was in the process of doing it, those days where it wasn't, the sad days or whatever, those were the days when I would break the no contact. But what helped me was I created a vision board the day after he left. And I wrote myself the past, the present, and the future on this board. The past was the relationship we had. So I wrote out some journal entries and put them on the board. The things, that nasty things he would say to me, I put it in quotes. And I put it on my board on my past. And where I was at that time, I was putting like Coach Tanya and, new wife, and, those kinds of things. In my future, I had like millionaire, vision board. And those days where I was missing him and all of that, I would turn to that board and I would look. He's gone. Like my favorite was, "You're free. Please don't ever." I wrote myself a note. "You're free. Please don't ever go back to that man. Don't ever go back to that man." And that allowed me to stay away from it. If I hadn't done that board, I probably would. And if my dead ex-husband's voice wasn't in my head, "Why are you with him?" That's all I kept hearing was, "Why are you with him?" Why are you dealing with it? And then that board, don't go back down. You're free. I kept saying you're free, and that's all I had to go off. That's what.
Okay, with your expertise in all of these, let's educate people on what abuse is, because I know there are different types of abuse, and some people may even be going through abuse and may not know that is abuse. Let's talk to people about what abuse really is, and then the different types of abuse, if we can.
There are different types of abuse, as we were talking earlier. Excuse me, as I was talking to a client earlier, she was saying that she was not in an abusive relationship, but he was manipulative and he would lie. I said, that's abuse. So the abuse can be subtle. Like for my relationship, I would say the first year and a half, he was perfect. You know, that was a part of the abusive cycle. They play this role to capture you, to get you to believe something about you. So you definitely pay attention to the mental. People can mentally
Play on your mind, yeah.
It doesn't have to be they're smacking you physically. They could be smacking you mentally. They could be calling you ugly. They could be calling you fat. They could be calling you this. That's abuse, even though they don't hit you, but emotionally they're beating the crap out of you. Sexual abuse, you want to, just because you're married, like my ex-husband abusive, he literally thought, and I understand the concept of marriage where I'm yours, you're mine, I get that, whatever. But if my body's hurting and I can't do it physically and you still do it, and that's rape, you know, so that's sexual abuse, you know, even though you are my husband, it's still, I'm telling you, stop, no. And then the act is portrayed as if you're an actual rapist.
Yeah.
And I'm a prostitute, you know, and he like literally, that was abuse. To him, it was sexual and fun, but no, you're literally choking me and raping me. Like I'm a victim of yours. So you want to pay attention to how they touch you. It could be touching inappropriately. I was abused as a kid and I have some issues. I'm working on it. Well, I've actually worked on most of it, but like with him, it would be certain places he would touch me. And I would tell him I felt uncomfortable with it. He would get offended and try to make it seem as if I'm blaming him for it, and he would do it anyway. That's abuse. You know, it's all kinds of, anything that is not right can be defined as abuse. If they continue to do it, and you've expressed to them, babe, I don't like this, or sweetheart, this hurts, or, you know, this makes me feel, let's talk, whatever, and they keep doing it, that's abuse, whatever it is. So it can look like name calling. It can look like punching. It can look like withholding money from them. Their money is mine. This is my money. If we're married, if I'm a housewife and you're working and you make most of the money, what do you mean it's your money? It's our money. I'm working too. I just don't create physical paper currency. But my work here at the house or whatever it is, that's still work. But if a man comes in, or a woman, because it could be a woman making all the money, whatever, if they're power driven and want to control, that's abuse, you know. So abuse can look like anything that takes you, especially in a marriage, that's inappropriately done, that's repetitively done after you've expressed. Even like my ex-husband, he would get angry with me and ignore me for 2 or 3 days. That's abuse. That's emotional abuse, you know. Why would you ignore your wife instead of communicating, sweetheart, I'm angry right now, let's just table this conversation and let me play a video game or drink a beer or something and I'll get back. Something. Not communicating this abuse. It could be anything that takes you off of the feeling good square, I should say. If it doesn't feel good and it's repetitively done, it's abuse. I can say that.
Yeah. Let's backtrack a little bit. The bit you said, if the woman is a housewife and you're working and you're bringing most part of the money, I think that being a housewife is a full-time job. Yes, taking care of children is a full-time job, you know, and we should actually be receiving salary for that. Seriously, because we give all our time to the children. We get not to even take time, good care of ourselves. You know, in the end, we get beaten, battered, and all that for the children, but we do it out of love. So we as mothers can never complain. But on the other side, when our partners cannot appreciate us enough to know that when they are making money, then it is for us. Because when we are taking care of the children, we are doing it for us. So everything is us and not, it cannot be me. So I pray that if the men are listening out there, at least they'll try and resonate with us on some level and get to know that, you know, some of these things, for me, I always say that if you're doing something to somebody and you think if the table is reversed and it is being done to you, you wouldn't like it, don't do it. That is what I always say, don't do it. If you are screaming at me, you are calling me names, if you are keeping your money away from me and you are doing things that if it's being done to you, you wouldn't like it, why would you do it to? Why would you do it to your friend? Why would you do it to your neighbor? Or why would you do it to somebody you say you love? You get, you do all of that, and then in the end, you come back and you say, I love you. When you need something from the person, you come back and you say, I love you. Do you expect the person to believe you at that point? You know, some of these things, let's just take the person being your partner on the side, and let's just look at it from the face value as all of us being human beings and being neighborly or being, you get it? On the first one is wrong. If you don't want it to be done to you, don't do it to your fellow person. It's so totally wrong. Whatever it is, though, I think we shouldn't be doing it to ourselves. It should be more love. And then, like you said, when the children get to grow up in a fun, loving home, it makes an impact. I think we don't see it. You see, I always say, when I hear stories, I always say, what are the children taking out of all of these? When they see mom and dad quarreling, when they see mom and dad, you know, talking on top of their voices and all, the children are watching, they are sucking in a lot. And what we forget is impacting on their lives as they grow up. You get it? So we should just try to keep the home peaceful and fun. Even when we will argue, it should be when they are sleeping, an undertone. Definitely we'll argue because we are from different backgrounds coming together to live in the same. So definitely there'll be some misunderstanding at some point, because even twins from the same womb tend to have differences at some point. So definitely there will be, but I think it is how we handle it that makes the difference and makes an impact in the children's lives as well. Do you think it's possible for abusers to change?
I can say anybody's can change if they, one, want to, two, are willing to put in the work, and three, ready to actually put in the work. If they want to change, if being abusive is no longer beneficial to them, they'll change. I'll put it like that. They benefit from it from a great perspective, because they get the control, they get the fear, they get the power. So if you take that from them, they no longer have any, I mean, what do they have? And then they have no choice but to change, because it no longer works for them. So that's why I actually do my, I'm actually doing a domestic violence, well, it's an event that I'm doing for women entrepreneurs who've been in abusive relationships, who have a difficult time trying to start a business or start their new life because of the emotional trauma. But definitely they can change, like I said, if they want to, if they're willing to, and if they're ready. They because anybody can change. So I can't say that they can't change, because that would be no different than somebody saying I can't change from being a victim, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, they can change if they choose to. It just has to be a choice. They have to want to. Yes.
Do you think that abusers are unconsciously groomed? I say this from the fact that probably somebody will see that his dad was an abuser, will abuse the mom and grow up to be an abuser as well, thinking that is the norm. Do you think they are unconsciously groomed abusers?
I can say that's an interesting question, because I know people whose parents were a certain way, but they were the total opposite, because they didn't like what the parent did. Then I like my first guy that I actually dated, his father, because he was abusive. He only hit me once though, and I scared him after that. He never did it again. But my, which was weird for me, because I didn't really deal with physical abuse. With that guy that I just divorced, that was the first time I've ever actually had that go on. But the first time it happened, he hit me for something, and it was like, why you do that? And come to find out, his father was abusive to his mother. And it was just conditioned in his head, although he never did it again, because again, I did scare him.
Yeah.
Like I literally scared him. So that kind of woke him out of it. And I saw him literally, this was when I was 17, I'm 45 now. I literally saw him maybe earlier this year, last year. And he said that he didn't remember hitting me, but he never hit another woman after that again. Because I literally scared him. Like I scared him. And I remember telling him, you are not your father and I'm not your mother.
Exactly.
So you can't, we're not gonna have the same relationship. And again, that goes back to piggyback to, like I wrote my second book, it's called My Secret Life. And there were powerful women. It was a collaboration of women, a panel of powerful women. I worked for the police department. I think one lady was a judge. There was one minister or a pastor or something, all in abusive relationships, because it happens so subtly. And it's not about your strength or your weakness. It can be, but it's about you and your desire to change yourself. So with an abuser, yeah, you may have grown up, and the same thing is interesting, because even with an abuser, it's the same thing with the one that accepts the abuse, you know?
Yeah.
Because I grew up watching my mother deal with my father cheating on her. To me, I grew up, and I remember, and I had my healing talk with her last year, and I asked her, why did you stay? Yeah. You taught me to stick around and deal with cheating men. I don't want to deal with a cheating husband. That's not okay with me. But for my mother, it was okay. So you can be groomed through your environment, you know, through the culture that you grow up, you know, all the uncles doing. Like I had to really come to grips with, there are no women in my family that are married. That's weird. Like literally, my niece is about to get married, and I had to do an announcement like, hey, family, I just realized Sadi will literally be the first woman. Like I've been married before, but I'm divorced, but there's not one woman in my family is married now, and those that have been, they didn't last long. My first marriage did last 14 years, though I can't say that. But it was toxic. So what 14 years of toxicity, that's not nothing to celebrate.
Can somebody say that you can be in an abusive marriage and then look away? Because it looks like sometimes these abusers, when you give them the room, they get to be more abusive. But when you look away, then they don't have any much to do. And like you said, sometimes when you stand up and you defend yourself, or when you stand up for yourself, then they tend to move away. That is another thing too. So you either stand up and defend yourself, or you look away and ignore them. Two ways.
Those people who look away, it's because you're not ready to face the internal pain that you're dealing with. Being in, like for me, it was the fear of the unknown is greater than the fear of the abuse, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, if I'm a housewife who doesn't work and this is my only source of income, what am I going to do when I get out of there?
Yeah.
I'm scared. I don't know. There's no source. I don't know. I just have, you know, that fear of getting out there will keep you in that. Well, at least here I'm safe. At least I know I can eat. My kids get water. They get food. You know, I might have to deal with Tom choking me, but I can handle it. You know, as long, you know, you start to rationalize these things, but it's not fair. So for those who look away, it's because you're not ready to face your truth.
Yeah.
That there's a part of you that you are not ready to face, and it's easier for you to sit here and complain and not to say that abuse is right or anything, but I'm speaking from experience, and I'm speaking as somebody who's gotten out of it and see it differently. You don't love yourself and you're complaining. For me, I had somebody, and I had to really do a lot of inner child healing to get to this point. My choices in men were not smart at all. One, my father called me the dumbest child in the world. So subconsciously, I always thought I was stupid. So it didn't matter what I did. But they were all safe, because if anything happened wrong in my life, guess what? I could blame the stupid man that I married, or the stupid choice that I made. I wasn't taking account of. So for me to stay in that dumb marriage, because it was dumb to stay in there. It was dumb to marry. I mean, it was. But I needed it because it allowed me to see what choices I was making wrong that was destroying my life. So for those who choose to empower themselves, like for me, I got out of that relationship because I started off trying to heal him, typically as a typical victim mindset. I wanted to fix him and fix the marriage because, oh, I just loved him so and whatever. So for me, it was on that journey of trying to fix him. The universe, source, greater energy was like, no, no, no. I'm glad you're on this journey, but let me switch it around. How about you fix yourself? So I started getting exposed to things about being an unhealed, like I didn't know what an empath was. I started reading about empathic relationships, narcissistic. I started researching narcissism. And when I started to understand what he was, it made me become much more clear on what I had to do at that point. I realized then it wasn't about him loving me or not loving me. It was about me loving me or not loving me. So I had to remove myself. And that at that point, I no longer looked away. So when you're looking away, it's because you're not ready to look inside and see what that dark part is, because that abuser represents your dark part. And it's safer to blame him for beating you up than it is for you blaming yourself for beating you up.
Wow. Do you think that the economy plays or has an influence on domestic violence and all that?
It can, and that's a good question. If you like my perfect example, I guess it can, because if you're money hungry or materialistic or egotistical or, fleshly and all of that, like my narcissist was very much so. The lifestyle, and I honestly can say, I really think he chose me out of all his selections. I really think he chose me because I made the most economical sense for him. I was the one that was going to make him lunches and prepare him to be that available individual in the street versus another woman who would have been taking all his money and, and all of that. So I was the safest choice. I had kids. He knew I wasn't going out in the streets and doing anything. He knew that I was going to be at home cooking and cleaning. He knew that I had that. So for him, while I'm doing those things, oh yeah, let me go out and have fun because I know she's over there versus somebody else. So in order for him to have that lifestyle still, he definitely, and I can say, and people think I'm crazy when I say this, but he did give me his money. The money part, there were only a few situations where he abused me or whatever with the money because I made just as much money as he did. So he really didn't have that upper power over me, but I allowed him to have that manhood belief that he was taking care of me. But anyway, it was equal. But for me, seeing that money was his way of feeling good about himself, because most abuser, that was his way of having power, so he wanted a lot of money because he knew that the more money he had, he could entertain me and whatever or whoever else, and he could still maintain that lifestyle that he was still single, or like he actually had two cell phones. I didn't know that. So that was a bill that he was paying that I didn't know. He had a credit card. I didn't know that.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? And he never confessed, but I found these things out after we separated. Going through separating our things, I ran across some writings that he had that was, credit card receipts and letters to other women. And I'm like, oh, like a narcissist is a total, complete stranger. You're married to a complete stranger, like literally. They have three personalities: the one they show the public, the one they show their spouse, and the one they are for real behind closed doors.
Yeah. How have you been able to, because I know you have 2 degrees, and then you graduated cum laude, and then you have, how many books have you written? Because I know that anybody who's been through what you've been through, it's difficult, Tanya. It's difficult to stand for yourself, even after you've come out of all the situation, the abusive situation. It's difficult to get things together and do the things you're doing now. It's so inspiring. How have you done it?
Oh man, like I said, that drive for me, and again, initially I started off trying to fix him.
Yeah.
And because like I said, the universe was like, no, I'm glad you're on that path of fixing, but we're going to redirect you. So on that path of trying to fix him, like literally, how do you get your husband to love you more? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I started off that way, but it turned into look in the mirror and love you instead, or, it became empowering. So once I started to feed my soul, which was starving, It was starving from real love. It was starving from affection. It was starving from knowledge. It was starving from truth. And I started to feed that to myself. And every day, like literally, I'm a college student by heart. I'm a researcher. I would do a research paper in a minute. So for me, learning about narcissism and learning all of that just gave me the even more courage.
Yeah.
It gave me even more power, because then it was, oh, this man is not about to defeat me. Because I one day said I was feeling so defeated. Oh my God, I was ready to like kill myself for real. I was really suicidal. This was a tough day. I don't know what happened, but I really just, I literally wanted somebody, I felt like a little girl who was crying and needed her daddy to hug her. Everything that could go wrong was going, oh my God, this was like, oh, it was crazy. But I remember saying, I just feel defeated. Like, I just, F it, give up, I give up. And I went home, something told me, because on my way home, I just kept saying, defeated, defeated, I'm defeated. I got home and I was like, let me look this word up. I looked the word up, oh, it pissed me off. It pissed me off. And at that moment, I was like, you know what? I will never use that word again, and nobody or nothing will ever defeat me. Because the word, if you look the word up, that's just literally, you're done for. You ain't got nothing else left. Literally, you're just done for. You just give up. It's no more fight. You don't care. You just, they beat you. Like you just got crushed and demolished. There's nothing left in you. And that's not true. Nobody's gonna ever defeat me. The only thing that's gonna stop me is death. And not even, I just told my kids today, even when I die, you still gonna hear my voice, because I got YouTube videos, Facebook videos, I got books, I got everything. You're never gonna shut me up. Never. My word is bond. It does not matter. I'm serious. So I know me, because I work with people who do, like you were saying, turn the other cheek or ignore it. And they have that victim mentality. You cannot have that. As long as you have that victim mentality, you are defeated. He's won, or they've won. Whether it's the job that's not treating you right, or the neighbor that's, the minute you give up, they've won, that you've defeated. So you cannot, I don't care how tough it gets. And I know I have been there, ready to split my everything, cut off everything. I have been there. I understand what that feels like. I get it. But when you get to that point, that's actually, and people hate when I say this because it's quite confusing, and I do talk about this in my sessions, but that's the best place for you to be. Because as a former lifeguard, I remember telling a 6'4" man that was drowning in 3 feet of water, all you got to do is stand up.
Yeah.
When you get to the bottom, that's the best place to do. When you're at rock bottom, that's the best place to be, because you get an opportunity to stand up, to stand tall, to see where you need to go, to start from scratch and get up out of it. So falling down part might be the most difficult. But when you get to rock bottom, that's time to celebrate. It's not time to give up. It's the opposite. It's time to celebrate. Because again, think about it. If you're drowning in a pool, your best thing is to go straight to the bottom. Why? Because as soon as you get to the ground, you can shoot yourself back up.
Yeah.
Versus struggling in the water.
Yeah.
And you're going to get tired, then you're going to drown, and you're going to die at the end because you're tired and whatever. But I would tell people, when I used to teach swim lessons, if you ever get scared and panic, just hold your breath and go to the bottom.
Yeah.
As soon as you get to the bottom, shoot your butt right back up. I guarantee you'll be out of the pool before I jump in there and save.
Yeah.
Because it's about defending yourself, and you have to look at relationships and anything that's toxic or anything that's trying to drown you. You have to look at rock bottom as your opportunity to save yourself.
So you did a first degree in what? What was your first degree in?
My first degree is actually in business, and my second degree is in behavioral science. I specialize in mental health, illness, and family studies. So I like I said, I work with families and relationships, and I work with individuals. So and behavioral science, for those of you who do not know, it's a study of psychology, sociology, and anthropology. So I study humans from head to toe, pretty much in and out, the society, the culture, from beginning to end, individuals, the society as a whole, and then the human nature. So since I've been a kid, I've always been fascinated with the human brain. I've always wanted to study, and I've always asked the question why, like when my parents would argue, like, why are you together? Like, I always wondered, why do people do what they do? Like, I've always been fascinated, even growing up, why am I doing this? Like, this doesn't make sense. It's not working for me. Why am I doing it? Because there's something inside of your mind that, and I talk about this in my course. I actually talked about this last week with my training, mindset training. There are 4 parts of the mindset, and if you're not able to manipulate all of them, then the main one, which is the unconscious part, which is where your trauma lies and all of that, that's going to control everything else. So if you don't get, it's like imagine an iceberg floating in the water. Above the iceberg and below the iceberg. Below the iceberg would be the unconscious and the subconscious, which is controlling the conscious and the superconscious, which is above the iceberg. So the unconscious would be the parts where your mind is developed, the ego development part. That's why I call the mind, that's where your mind is set. That's where you're young and something may happen. And if it's not rectified, the mind gets set on this particular thought about something. It then develops an emotion about it. And then you grow up thinking that way. And the way you think in your unconscious mind controls your subconscious, which ultimately controls the conscious mind. But the superconscious mind is where you're able to tap into all of those parts of yourself, heal the mind, and then you're in control. It's as if you're operating as if you're in your highest form of being. So the superconscious mind, of course, is like spiritual awakening. Of course, that's where you want to get. But in order to get there, you have to identify. That's why you can be doing, so like some people will say they do certain things. That's just how I am. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, you can change. That it's not working. It's ruining the family. What do you mean change? You can't change. That's a lot. You don't want to. But because consciously they think that that's how they are, but unconsciously up under that iceberg, no, you're this way because your mom used to call you stupid when you were a kid, or you know. So that's why you have to, like for me, I realized why I was so loud. Because when I was a kid, I was always told to be quiet. So when I didn't know that, but unconsciously, as an adult, I'm grown. You're not gonna tell me to be quiet, so wherever I go, I'm loud. But consciously, I'm loud because that's just how I am.
Yeah.
No, you're loud because you want attention. Because I was, it's a lot of things, and that was something that was in my mind. So definitely, if you can think about what you want, and anything is possible in life, period. It doesn't matter what you're going through. You could be broke, living under a bridge, and the next year be a billionaire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about if you get tired of living up under that bridge. That's all. Now, if you're comfortable up under the bridge, you can stay there and jolly go lucky, stay up under there. You can have fun with all the rest of them up under there. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. Even staying in a toxic relationship, if you're comfortable, which probably not, but if you're okay with being hurt every day and being lied to and deceived and, being manipulated and gaslighted, and, if you love the love bombing, that's fine. You're going to be comfortable and you're going to stay there. But the moment you get sick and I say, that saying, you're sick and tired. Well, I used to say, I told myself I'm sick and tired, not tired, but I would use the word tired. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I couldn't take it no more because I knew that life that I was living was not me. I knew, even as a kid, I knew I was going to be a millionaire as a kid. I would always say a million. I never knew what the million was, but I always would say, I'm going to have a million. I'm going to do 1 million books or 1 million, whatever it was, a million, whatever. And what I realized growing up in my journey is my mission in life is to transform the lives and the minds of 1 million people.
Yeah.
So not knowing when I was a kid that's what that million was, like my mission, my personal mission. And I vowed to the universe, before I leave here, I got to touch 1 million minds. I have to allow them to see that there's greatness in you. Exactly. And just because you may not see it or you have not seen it, it's not there.
Yeah.
You just have to remove yourself from the
Mhm.
environment that's telling you it's not there. And it first starts with your mindset. You have to first put in your mind that you are brilliant, that you are awesome, you are whatever. If you can imagine it, it's yours. The only reason you're imagining it is because it's your dream that's preserved just for you. I told a client a couple of weeks ago, I like football, but I'm not Tom Brady. So when I was growing up, I didn't have footballs in my head all day long. I didn't do it because that's not my imagination to be a quarterback.
Yeah.
That wasn't in my mind. I didn't want. Now I like football, but no. But I'm pretty sure Tom Brady didn't grow up wanting to be a wife and write books either. So whatever it is that you want, you definitely can achieve it. You just have to set it in your mind. You have to transform your mind. You have to elevate your mind. You have to want it first. You have to have faith that it's yours. You have to believe it. It's all energy. It's all energy. Whether it's if you're coming from a religious perspective or spiritual, whatever. It all equates down to energy. Your thoughts create your reality, and your thoughts are energy. And the universe operates off of energy. So whatever you're thinking is what you're going to see.
And we then say that going through the things you went through, I wouldn't say it was a good thing, but because inside of you all the time you have felt or you have thought of million. Now you're just saying that you're going to touch a million lives before if anything should happen, it happens to you. Do you think that going through what you went through in your journey has actually made things or made a picture very clear to you? So when you are dealing with people, you know exactly where to hit, what to do, and to be able to give them the best of advice because you've experienced it firsthand. So you have a clear vision of what they're expressing to you or telling you, and then you can therefore help them. Do you think so? Do you think your experiences in life has really helped at this point?
Things like if you go on my website or my appointments and scheduling page, there's tons of courses that I have on there. So everything that I went through, especially over the last 2 years, I documented it and turned it into an opportunity to help somebody else.
Great.
Most of the courses I do include worksheets or workbooks or some type of activity, meditation, or some type of shadow work or something. So definitely my personal experiences have gotten me, in addition to my college degrees, because I can say the life experiences helped me more than the college degrees.
Exactly.
Definitely because most of the stuff in college, not to say that I'm knocking my degree, I appreciate it. Even though I went for it for the wrong reasons, but I do appreciate having it because I do see what it's for. A lot of people do respect the degree.
Yeah.
But I would say 30% of my knowledge came from college. The rest came from life experience. 30% came, and only the 30% is so I can use big words. I just paid $100,000 to use big words because I can Google everything I tell you about.
This is deep, Tonya. This is what you just shared. Is deep. So this tells us that life is actually a learning class. It's a classroom, isn't it? It's a learning stage, it's a classroom. I always say that our experiences you can never buy. You can never buy. You can buy a college degree, all of those you can buy, but the experience, you have to live through it. And as you go through it, it shapes you, it makes you better, it makes you tougher, stronger, and all of that, And it's one thing that we should, I wouldn't say that we should wish to go through, trials and difficult times and all, but when they come, we just have to brace ourselves and face it because there's definitely something good in there for us. So what would be your best advice to people going through any form of abuse as we wrap up?
The best advice, get out. For me, and I understand, and for me, it took me 1.5 years to get out. I had to strategically get out. So for when I say get out, I don't necessarily mean, because you may not be able to get out today, but in 6 months, you may be able to if you take the time to plan. So for me, literally, it took me 1.5 years. I had to transition, like where we first got together, it was his house. And I knew if he got angry, get out of my house.
Yeah. So
I had to get us in a position where it was my house or our house, and you get out because I got the kids and my credit went through before yours. And, it was more of an empowerment. Then it was I got rid of the old raggedy car with us together that, nope, I got me a newer vehicle, so a little bit more independent. It's just, my advice definitely is to get out. But in the meantime, heal from your pain. Because as long as you're wounded on the inside, that abuser represents that wound and they're going to stay. They will never leave until you get rid of them, period. They will never, and that's from a spiritual perspective and a physical, because an abuser, unless they've replaced you with somebody else, they will never leave you. For what? That's the time of their life. They get to disrespect somebody without getting punished. They get to cheat on you without being rejected,
Yeah.
I mean, if you cheat and if I hit you and you don't do anything, that's the best relationship ever for me. If you look at it from that perspective, you're giving them what they think they deserve, which is somebody that they can smack around or cheat on or lie to or disrespect. Because at the end of the day, they don't love themselves. That bit of advice is get out, save your life, because you never know, the next day could be the end of your life or theirs.
Yeah.
And it could be that. Some relationships are that. Like literally before we separated, that last night, I had a knife in my hand and I was ready to kill it. And my brother's cousin had a gun ready. It can get that bad. So when I say get out, get out. And again, you may not be able to get out today, but start planning today. Make the decision to get out today, right now. And don't look back. Even if it takes you a year, because again, it took me a year and a half to plan for it. Even if it takes 2 years to get out. But in those 2 years, guess what? You're building your self-esteem. You're building your courage. You're building your self-confidence. If you want to go get a trade right quick, because you might need to get a little quick job, you're preparing. It will be no different than preparing for a husband. It's the same difference. Preparing to leave a toxic one. You're going to take the steps necessary to get out. And if you need help, definitely I can help you with that. I can definitely help you with that.
Great.
In this last year, I've written 2 books. One of them hit #1 bestseller in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
I've started 2 businesses, I've healed from so much pain. I have gotten through so much. Like I said, I've written over 100 courses and programs and all of that you can find many of them on my website. If you get out, then everything you've asked for will come to you. It's not going to come while you're there, because the universe is never going to bless you from a negative place. You have to be in a positive receiving place, and you're never receiving when you're being choked and abused. You're in a place of desperation. You can't produce when you're desperate. You can't be effective when you're desperate. You have to be at a place of peace, and the universe will respond. So as long as you have that toxic energy in your life, whether it's a person, a job, a thought, it could be a thought. It doesn't even have to be a person. You could be abusing yourself. As long as you are in that negative environment or that toxic situation, the universe will never bless you with what your soul really wants. Now, it might give your ego what it wants. So you might get a new pair of shoes or a new job that pay a little good money, but your soul will never be at peace, because the soul, I have this show that I do weekly on my Facebook. It's called The Soul Knows. And the soul knows exactly what it wants, and it knows exactly how to go get it. And it will put you in situations, whether we think they're good or bad, the soul will allow you to go and it will lead you in situations. That's why you attract certain things, because the soul has a mission that you ain't got nothing to do with. It's just up for you to catch up and be like, oh, that's why I'm doing. That's why you can experience something 2 years later. Oh, that's what that was. Because your soul has already led you through that, because it has a place. Like my soul needed me to be here today. And had I stayed with him 2 more days, I wouldn't have been here today. So the situations that led up to that day where he left had to have happened. My soul knew that particular day I needed to do certain things and say certain things, because that particular day was the very day that he had to go. Because if it would have been another day or 2 later, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have but everything I just told you would not, I would, somebody else probably would be sitting here telling you the same thing, but it wouldn't have been me. So we definitely have to follow our instincts, like I was saying earlier. You definitely have to follow your gut. You definitely have to surrender. That's my advice. Surrender. Whatever it is that you're going through, I don't care how hard it is. Even if you got to get on your knees and cry and beat the ground down, it doesn't matter. You can scream and yell at the universe or God. You'll understand, I'm sure. But guess what? When you let him know your truth, and that's when God responds and the universe responds, when you're at your greatest, your highest, and your truth. Because you could be mad. But if you're, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I don't need that. Well, you're not going to get anything. But if you say, no, I'm angry, I'm upset, I need this, I want, that's when because that's that energy, you're stepping into your fullness, which is, knowing you can manifest and command it to come to you. So if you're struggling with something, I would definitely say, just follow your instinct, trust your gut, and just surrender. Allow whatever is happening to happen. Don't fight it. Because the more you fight it, the more resistance you'll have and the longer you'll experience the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. In closing, Tanya, where can our listeners connect with you?
Well, you can definitely reach me on my website. It's www.coachingbytanya.com, and that's Tanya with an O, not an A.
Great. It's been lovely having you on Podcast with Sheila today. I enjoyed it. I have learned a lot. I believe our listeners are going to also learn a lot from your experience. And thank you so much for sharing, because it isn't everybody who can share their story the way you shared it with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Wow. If you've been listening in, this has been season 2, episode 28 of our podcast series, where we've been bringing your way seasoned guests with inspiring real life stories to share with us. Do not miss out on all these lovely experiences. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. We have a video presentation of this episode on our YouTube channel. Just search for Podcast with Sheila on YouTube and you'll find us. Until we meet again, have a lovely week.